Welcome back to another edition of LSU Live. I'm your host, Lewis Johnson, and this will be unfortunately, your last edition of the LSU Live postgame here at the Voice of LSU. As LSU goes down to Houston by a score of 38-35 in the Texas Bowl. Um, look, I can't really knock them too much. LSU came into the game obviously pretty short-handed. You're missing a lot of your star players, and look, we understand that LSU isn't the only team that's missing star players right now, but I think considering how short-handed LSU was coming into the game, you can't really get too high or too low when I'm considering how LSU played in this game. I think, especially offensively, LSU overachieved, and you can say it was a Big 12 opponent. You can say whatever you want, but no matter who the opponent is, LSU hasn't scored more than 25 points against anybody with the Pulse or anybody in FBS football this year. So you go down 38-35, and you saw some fight in the team. You saw some guys that didn't quit. You saw some guys who had something to lose, who played anyway. Uh, your Bernard Goodens, your Jacobian Guillory's, or your Tyree Adams, guys who were getting ready for the draft or either getting ready for the portal, still came through and decided to play in this game. So the guys showed some pride, but at the end of the day, pride wasn't quite enough to get the dub. So LSU again goes down 38-35. Game got off to an absolutely crazy start. You've been waiting for big plays the whole year. If you're LSU, you've been waiting on big plays from guys like Xavier Thomas and Barry Brown in the return game and special teams. And for whatever reason, you weren't really seeing that. These are guys who have been proven to be awesome special team players and returners, but you weren't quite getting to the point to where you were seeing those big plays. Well, you saw some today, specifically in Barry Brown. First kickoff of the game, Barry Brown takes it to the crib. LSU is off to a great start. You start off with a kickoff return for a touchdown, and you can't start a game any better than that, especially for a team that has trouble scoring points. So Barry Brown kicks it off with a 7-0 lead for LSU. You follow that up with a great drive, which that's another thing that we haven't seen all year from LSU is good drives on that first drive of the game. Drives that result in points on that first drive of the game for LSU. So you get a big run from Harlem Berry on that first possession where LSU actually had the ball and didn't just run it back. Big run from Berry. Eventually you get a touchdown pass on the outbreaking route from Trey Green, which was an ongoing thing for this day. Trey Green absolutely went off. You can't say enough about him. You saw a lot of talent, a lot of NFL talent at the tight end position today. And luckily for LSU, at least one of those tight ends was in purple and gold. Trey Green could not be stopped. He looked like an absolute mutant at times out there, an alien. He made plays that you just simply shouldn't be making at any level of football. But anyway, they go up 14-0 at that point. And then you see one of those pesky things that has hurt LSU all year, and that's penalties. And penalties would influence the next few drives for Houston. Every touchdown drive in that first half was influenced by penalties. On the first touchdown drive, you get face mask, PI, and anyway, eventually they get the touchdown, and LSU is up 14-7 at that point. Houston's next touchdown drive is helped by penalties also. Another PI call. And some of these PI calls were kind of iffy. Was the ball catchable? Were both guys kind of hand fighting? But however you look at it, the way it played out is LSU got the penalties. It kept drives going for Houston. And it just kept them in the game. So at the end of the first half, another touchdown pass to Tanner Kozio, who was an absolute dog. I mean, I talked about him leading up to this game, and how that tight end position has hurt LSU over the course of this year, and that continued tonight. With Kozio absolutely went off for 9 catches, I think 76 yards. He had the last touchdown of the first half to put Houston up 21-14. So as you get to halftime and you see Houston go up with all the momentum, you start to wonder, is this thing going to get away from LSU at this point? LSU went up 14-0, but after that first kickoff return and after that first drive of scripted plays, you didn't see anything from LSU. All you saw was a struggling offense, and you saw sacks. You saw more of the same of what you saw all year. You saw sacks. You saw a running game that couldn't get off the ground. No space. Absolutely no space for your running backs to run in that offense. And you start to wonder, is this really what it's going to be for the rest of this game? Is LSU going to finish against a Big 12 opponent and score under 20 points and look completely inept on offense? One thing that kind of bothered me at the end of the first half, first I'll say this: the defense didn't have its best day. I think that's obvious. The LSU defense did not have its best day, but what do you expect when you don't have a guy like Mansour Delane? That changes the whole defense. Not having Delane and Halsey out there, and it's nothing against the guys who were out there. You had some great safety play from Cooley. I think Deshaun Spears had a good game, but you're talking about 2 All-Americans. So that defense is not going to look the same without AJ Halsey and Mansour Delane. But the soft, one of the things that bothered me was that soft defense at the end of the first half, that prevent that just allowed Houston to easily just pretty much walk down the field playing pitch and catch. And look, Wakeman is too good for that. Like, he might not be looked at as the top quarterback prospect on the board right now, but there's a reason that he was viewed as a 5-star coming out of high school. Like, he can make the easy throws. Like, he's got a big arm. He's an accurate guy. He's a tough kid, and you can't back up off of him and just concede these passes, especially when you got a guy like Kozio out there at tight end. So that strategy didn't exactly help LSU at the end of the first half. So you end up going into halftime at 21-14 with Houston up. LSU did start the second half off on a good note with getting a stop on their first possession. So you stop Houston on the first possession, you get the ball back, and when LSU gets the ball, immediately you get a big play, a big pass and play to Barry and Brown, and that kind of set the tone for that drive. Michael Van Buren, I want to talk about him for a second. He was much sharper today. He looked much more comfortable in the offense, and you got to like what you saw from him. Do you like it enough to where you want to move forward with him in 2026 as the LSU starting quarterback? We're not going to go that far, but what he showed today is there's more to him than what you saw in those couple of games at the end of the season where he gets thrown in there into a bad offense that wasn't really built for him to begin with. So anyway, Van Buren has a good drive at the beginning of the second half in the third quarter. And this is the drive where he makes the throw to Tre'Davious Green, and Green goes up with one hand. It wasn't even the best throw. It was high, but there wasn't really a lot of touch on it. It wasn't a loft to it. It was a high ball, but it was a pretty much a laser, like thrown straight in there. And Green goes up while he's getting absolutely mugged by the defender, grabs it with one hand, brings it in the 2, and makes the catch falling back, because that's the kind of athlete he is. So y'all enjoy Tre'Davious Green for one more year, because you're not going to see him at the college level any longer than that. Dude is just too good. All right, so at this point it's tied up at 21 after the Tre'Davious Green touchdown. The next drive is another Tanner Kozio drive. I'm not going to get too far into it. It just went to them whenever they got in trouble. LSU had no answers for them all night. And eventually Houston goes up 28-21. You also saw some good plays for some younger guys. And one of those guys for LSU is going to be Tyler Singleton at linebacker. We heard good things about Singleton coming into the season. But tonight we got to see firsthand, while we were hearing all these things, you couldn't, if you don't have access to practice, you couldn't see what he was doing. But you heard a lot of good reports about Singleton, and you saw him very active in the run game, and he looked very comfortable in the pass game for a linebacker. So Singleton had a big tackle on that next possession for Houston, and another big hit by Cooley kind of leads to a 3-and-out for Houston. After that, you get a PI call on Barry and Brown, one of the few PI calls that LSU would get in their favor. And you really could have called another one right after that. We won't dig into calls right now. It ain't that big a deal. But you get a big 3rd and long pass to Trey Green again, which leads to a touchdown pass to Kyle Parker. It's pushed the score at 28-28. Parker was another guy who absolutely went off this game. I could go on and on about Kyle Parker and what he has done for LSU, not only tonight, but this year. But tonight, his talents were on full display. And we're definitely going to talk more about Kyle Parker as the show goes on. So LSU gets to stop. They hold Houston to 3 to bring the score to 31-28 with almost 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So right now, you really need a score if you're LSU. Van Buren misses a guy on 3rd and 3. Another case of kind of rushing, not getting his feet set. It's kind of played them, but he's much better about that in this game, but kind of came back to bite him on that drive. So you punt with about 7 minutes left. Another young guy showed out for LSU, Devon Keys. And, I mean, he's not so young anymore. He's just finished up a year starting at the linebacker position. And also got pretty good playing time his freshman year. So he'll come in as a junior ready to play. So you get a big tackle from Keys on 3rd down. But again, Tanner Cozio comes in on 4th down and gets the conversion. Holds on to the ball after a big hit. They get a big passing play down the sideline after that. And then Dean Connors breaks loose for a run to bring the score to 38-28. At that point, you kind of feel like the game is over. But to LSU's credit, they didn't quit. So Houston goes up 38-28. Chris Hilton finally gets a deep ball down the field. Next, you get a pass to Kyle Parker in tight coverage. Another great throw by Michael Van Buren. And Xavier Thomas eventually runs it in for a touchdown to get it to 38-35. In typical LSU fashion, they're not quite able to get the onside kick, even though the guys were in great position for it. It was an excellent kick by Aaron Burrell, but it just wasn't meant to be, and that's all right. So LSU goes down 38-35. Look, of course you want to end with the win. You want to finish the season on a high note, but it just wasn't quite in the cards for LSU tonight. So my initial reaction to that loss, LSU, by the way, they fall to 76. So you're one game over 500 for the year. Doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things because people are really more concerned about LSU moving forward than they are for 2025. But my initial reactions to LSU losing this game is you pretty much had most of the same issues that plagued LSU over the course of the year. It kind of reared its head again. Stuff like the run game. LSU, again, still can't run the ball. And look, there was no reason to think that LSU was going to run the ball all of a sudden tonight. It doesn't matter who LSU is playing. They just couldn't run the ball this year. There were times when I thought that LSU didn't try to run it enough. There were times when I was right. But the whole time, regardless of what I thought, LSU is just not a good run team. So, talking about their run game, LSU finished with 77 yards against Houston. Houston finished with 201 yards on the ground. So, Houston out physical to you. You're not going to win many games with that kind of deficit in the run game. Like, you're talking about 130 yards, 120 yards. Look, 77 yards ain't going to cut it. And it's really a testament to the play of your quarterback and the rest of your skill players when you can put up 35 points when you only ran for 77 yards. When you can run for 201 yards, that's why you saw MVB on his back all night, getting sacked 4 times, but you saw Connor Wegman comfortable in the pocket and making all the throws he wanted to make with all the time in the world. Because you can run the ball. You can't just pin your ears back and come at them. So the run game was one of those things that kind of hurt LSU. Once again, penalties. Penalties has been a constant issue for LSU all year. Again, tonight you had 95 yards in penalties. You had 9 penalties for 95 yards. And Houston had 29 yards penalties. And you know, you can kind of nitpick the calls, but bottom line is LSU is making some stupid plays. Maybe not all of those PI calls were earned, but the face mask, the horse collar, and I understand you're trying to make a play. You get in the backfield, you're trying to make a play any way you can, but you understand that you can't tackle the guy that way. The unsportsmanlike conduct, you kind of get a little wound up in the heat of the moment, and you know Frank Wilson is a pretty level-headed guy, but emotions got the best of him. So penalties again were an issue for LSU, and penalties kept a lot of those early drives from Houston going, where if you get a stop, you're up 14-0 and you get a stop, going up 21-0 can completely change the trajectory of this game. You can imagine the pressure that Houston is feeling at home with the home crowd behind them. Even though it's not at Houston Stadium, they're playing in Houston, and the crowd was very pro-Houston. But you change the feel of that game if you're able to get a stop early on. But LSU wasn't quite able to do that because of the penalties. So you got the run game, you got penalties. Another issue that's hurt LSU all year, they came back again tonight, is pass protection. LSU didn't get any sacks on Connor Wegman, did not sack him one time. Michael Van Buren, on the other hand, was sacked 4 times, and 3 of those were in the first half. So you just can't expect too much of your offense when you're giving up sacks like that. You can't expect anything from your offense. You can't say what the quarterback should be doing. You can't really blame Van Buren when you're getting sacked like that. And it's not like a case of him not seeing the guy that's unaccounted for and getting it out to a hot receiver. It's a case of guys not knowing who to block. It's the same old stuff we've been seeing, guys not knowing who to block. So there's 3 things: the run game, the penalties, the pass protection. And another thing that's hurt LSU all year that I mentioned in the preview leading up to this game is covering tight ends. Vanderbilt hurt LSU, Ole Miss hurt LSU, Alabama hurt LSU. Tight ends have killed LSU all year long. It continued today. I'm not going to rag on DJ Pickett. DJ Pickett is a great cornerback, and he's only going to get better. He's a freshman. Koziol is it's a tough matchup. He's a tough matchup. He not only has the size, but he has not only has the height, but he has the size, the girth, the body. I mean, he's got like 50 pounds on DJ Pickett. So you playing off of him, and he gets those long arms on you, you're just not going to be able to make the play. And he was an absolute thorn in the side of LSU tonight. And those four things, the run game, the penalties, the pass pro, and the tight end coverage, those things have killed LSU all year, and they continue to hurt LSU tonight. So things weren't all bad for LSU. There's a lot to look forward to. If you're an LSU fan, don't get too down in the dumps about this game, because look, I'm not one of those guys who will say that a bowl game doesn't mean anything, but other than how it makes you feel tonight, it really doesn't mean a lot. It doesn't mean much. Everything is about the future right now for LSU. The head coach for LSU moving forward was walking around in street clothes doing interviews tonight. So everything that LSU has to look forward to is in front of them. Yeah, this is the game that you want to win. You want to finish the game on a high note. But there were some good things. There were some positives in this game. And starting with those positives, we want to talk about some of the young standouts for this LSU team. Guys that you will likely see next year. I'm not going to say anything is ever definite, because with the transfer portal, until that thing closes, you can't get too confident about anybody. As of now, you got a lot of young talent that look good tonight, and it's encouraging. Tre'Davious Green, you got to start with him. He was uncoverable. He had 4 catches for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. So you got a tight end that averages 20 yards a catch. It's going to be a good night for you on offense. And Tre'Davious Green is a huge reason why LSU was able to score 38 points. When, again, they haven't scored more than 25 against an FBS opponent this year. So Tre'Davious Green stood out. Tyler Singleton at linebacker stood out, and that's a pretty big deal, because you need them. When you see Tyler Singleton and Devon Keys have a game the way they had tonight, and you consider the probability that Whit Weeks is going to come back. So now not only do you have good linebackers, you have depth at linebacker. If somebody goes down, you trust the next guy. If Whit Weeks goes down, God forbid, next year, or if Keys goes down, Singleton is going to come in and do his thing. And from my point of view, Singleton was even better than those guys in pass coverage. Now, you didn't see a lot of it, but from what you saw, I haven't seen many linebackers at LSU with hips like Singleton, and it makes sense because he's a former safety. He was a big time safety at Manny in high school, but he looked really good. He was impressive, and he really looked like he understood where he needed to be, and that's going to be huge for 2026. Kyle Parker. Other than Tre'Davious Green, Kyle Parker was easily your most impressive receiving target for LSU tonight. He had 7 catches, so he led the team in catches. 7 catches, 68 yards, 1 touchdown, and he's been reliable all year. But you got to see some of that twitch. You got to see him in the open field, and I think that Kyle Parker in the Lane Kiffin offense is going to be extremely fun to watch. I think that Kyle Parker is really going to do his thing in this Lane Kiffin offense, and I look forward to seeing it. I know that LSU is going to target some wide receivers once that portal opens up, but don't forget about Parker, and I don't think many people will after the night he had tonight. And how can we forget Michael Van Buren? Look, everybody's curious, including me, about where LSU is going to go in the portal when it comes to quarterback, and I've said it several times. I expect LSU to go after multiple quarterbacks in this season, in this transfer portal window. But Van Buren looked good tonight, and I think it was a testament to having some time to actually get some reps and be the guy for about a month. When he came in and took over the job late in the year, Nussmeier had been the guy the whole time. and you've built an offense around a couple of things. You built an offense around that's my strengths, and you also built an offense around the fact that you can't block. You got all these screens, all this stuff built in because you can't block, you can't protect, you can't really expect the offensive line to hold up for more than 2 seconds to get deeper into your route tree and route combinations. So Van Buren, he looked like a different guy. He looked like a different guy tonight. He was decisive. He made better reads. He was understanding what he was getting from the defense better than he had been. He was more accurate, and I think a lot of that just came from a comfort level. He still needs to have more touch on some of these passes. Know when to kind of loft it and let your guy run under it, as opposed to just driving it in there. Taking your time on some of the easy throws and just setting your feet. You still have a few instances, especially like on your really easy throws out in the flat, where you're just rushing it. You're just not taking your time. You're just not setting your feet and you're rushing that ball. And you're either throwing an incompletion or you're throwing it where the receiver can't do much once he gets it. But again, I'm talking about the positives right now. And he was just a sharper quarterback than what we've seen. Van Buren finished with 267 yards and 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And if you saw him the last couple of games of the year, in no world did you expect him to approach 300 yards in one game. But I think what we saw tonight from Van Buren was a better representation of who he really is as a quarterback. In the future, will that be at LSU or not? We don't know. But he's better than what he's shown to this point. And I'm glad he was able to finish the year on a high note, even though he couldn't get the win. I talked about Devon Keys. Keys had 14 tackles, and he was absolutely all over the place tonight. Time and time again, when LSU needed to stop, when you knew that Houston was going to run it, Devon Keys was reading it, and he was getting into the backfield, and he was making plays. So you get a guy like him combined with Weeks and Singleton, you're looking at a very solid linebacking core for 2026. And speaking of their linebacking core, you had a few other guys who didn't really put up the numbers, didn't really put up the stats, but they had solid games and they got a chance to get in and get their feet wet. And I'm talking about young guys like Charles Ross, like Zach Weeks, like CJ Jim Corley. None of these guys had more than 2 or 3 tackles, but these are guys who are going to benefit from that experience of this game, and more importantly, from the practices leading up to this game, because LSU is going to be dependent on those guys moving forward. So those are a few young guys that we got to see, and that's one thing that I was looking forward to in this game. You're not going to get a championship ring for winning the Texas Bowl. So the best thing about winning this bowl game is it makes your record look better and it makes everybody feel good for a night. But I think what's more important is to see what you got moving forward. And the guys I just discussed are a good indicator that LSU is in pretty good shape, especially after this transfer portal window opens up on January 2nd. Speaking of that transfer portal window, looking forward, it's obvious that LSU has some needs. And you saw it tonight. You also saw it throughout the season. And it really stands out when you watch the playoff games and you see teams like Miami and you see teams like Alabama and you see these pass rushers. You see these guys who change the game, who control the game, who control the line of scrimmage, guys who get to the quarterback and allow the defense to do so many things because you don't have to send extra people to get the quarterback. And LSU has good defensive ends. LSU does not have great defensive ends, at least from what we see. I mean, I don't know what the younger guys are looking like, and I'm not trying to cut down a guy like Pyburn or Patrick Payton. Payton was good at what he does. He gets in the passing lanes. He gets his hands up. when it comes to rushing the passer, LSU just doesn't have that right now. At least we don't see that. So one of your bigger needs in the transfer portal is going to be edge rushers. You need guys who can impact the game. And you look at a program like A&M and what they got this year in Cassius Howell, what they got last year in Nick Scordon. This is the kind of hit that LSU needs to make. The same way LSU hit on a corner like Mansour Delane, they need to hit on an edge guy. And I'm not sure that you have an edge guy to a dominant level in the portal right now, but you got some guys who can help you. So they need to attack the portal for edge rushers. I'm not going to talk much about the offensive line and quarterback position because that's obvious. Everybody knows that LSU is going to go after quarterbacks and offensive linemen, and even more offensive linemen than we thought because guys are jumping in the portal by the day. You got Cohen Eccles, you got Tyree Adams, you got Carius Kern. A lot of guys jumping in that portal and guys that you really were going to count on, like Tyree Adams, was losing him is huge. But as part of it, that's the name of the game right now. Guys are going to get in the portal. Guys are going to try their luck. And some guys are going to get more money than what they were getting at LSU. Some guys are going to get more playing time than what they would get at LSU. And some guys are going to end up taking a step down. Either way, it's just part of it. And LSU needs more of them. I really hate that because you don't want to go into next year with a completely brand new offensive line. It is what it is. Edge rushers, offensive line, quarterback. You need a proven outside receiver. You need a big X guy on the outside who can command attention from the defense. We know what Tre'Davious Green brings to this offense. So imagine a nightmare of trying to figure out how you're going to cover a guy that's uncoverable. I mean, Tre'Davious Green is even a mismatch on double teams. But if you get a truly dominant guy on the outside, and guys like Teron Francis, I think, are going to be impactful next year. I've talked about Kyle Parker. I think Parker is going to live in the slot. But you could also see some Destin Hill on the outside. And those guys could turn out to be some great players for LSU. But I would like to see LSU go out and get a guy that's proven right now, a guy like Nick Marsh out of Michigan State, and have somebody that can really demand the attention of the defense. Like when you're game planning, you're thinking, okay, what are we going to do about this guy? That's what LSU needs on the outside at receiver. Look, again, don't get too down about this game because LSU is going to look a whole lot different. LSU is going to look a whole lot different after the transfer portal window, and the offense. You won't go another day with the offense looking. Oh, sorry, I just got a message. Yeah, you won't go another year with the offense looking the way it did this year. I hate to say things, I hate to be definite. I hate to just say things and speak in absolutes. But if there's one thing you can count on from Lane Kiffin is the offense is not going to look like it did this year. And you would think that the defense will continue to grow because that's what it's done every year that Blake Becker has been at the helm. So the LSU's future, I mean, it's going to sound crazy as hell to say this, but LSU's future is ahead of it. And don't read too much into Texas Bowl loss against Houston, who had everything in the world to play for. I mean, Houston is trying to win 10 games. They're trying to beat an SEC opponent. You got a guy in Willie Fritz. It's his second year there. He's trying to finish on a high note. And to beat LSU in Houston, that means a lot for them as far as recruiting. LSU is still going to recruit Houston, the area. They're still going to recruit South Texas. Nobody's going to look at this game and say, oh, well, I guess I can't go to LSU. That'll never be good. No, guys are going to look and say, well, they'll look a lot different next year. Anybody that follows the sport will kind of expect that from LSU. Another thing that kind of stuck out during the game, which wasn't part of the actual game, but it was part of the broadcast, was the Lane Kiffin interview during the game. And I thought it was very interesting because Kiffin has been known as the transfer portal king or whatever. Whether he said that or somebody else said it, I don't know. But he's known as a guy who attacks the transfer portal. And he kept Ole Miss relevant going that route. And I didn't really expect that from him at LSU. I didn't expect him to go into every year leaning into the transfer portal and depending on that to continue to be relevant and fight for playoff spots. And Kiffin kind of confirmed what I thought his approach would be tonight. And he started by kind of glazing Louisiana a little bit, a little riding a little bit, if you will, and talking about the level of talent in the state and how great it is, and the stats, the same stats I've poured out on here about the NFL players per capita in this state, which is all true. And he goes on to say that he wants to build his team through high school recruiting and then supplement that team via the portal. And that wasn't a shock to me, but it was interesting to hear him say that and kind of clarify his approach and what it's going to be at LSU as opposed to what it was at Ole Miss. And for a lot of people who are asking me, why would he come to LSU and why would he leave Ole Miss and what he's built there? He just beat LSU. Why would he come there? Because he can do that. He can come to LSU and pretty much build his teams from the high school level, which is the only way to truly be able to sustain a championship level program. If you look at the best programs, the most consistent programs, the Georgias and Ohio States, they supplement with a few of the best and the brightest out of the portal, but they're building their team through high school recruiting. And yeah, you can get enough kids to make a splash and get in the playoffs, but will you win it all? Most likely not. And when you get there next year is anybody's guess. So the way Kiffin plans to build his roster at LSU is going to be much more sustainable than it was at Ole Miss. So I think again, there's a lot to look forward to if you're an LSU fan. Put this game behind you. Get ready for this portal to open up. Look, give all the respect in the world to the guys who come to LSU and played their hearts out and who've played their last game at LSU. Whether you're going to the league or going to the portal, I appreciate what these guys have done and putting their bodies on the line for LSU. But there's no doubt about it. The biggest story tonight is what's ahead of LSU and not what's behind them. So good luck to Frank Wilson. I think he did an admirable job. He was in a tough spot. You can't really change. You can't completely change an offense at that point in the season. You can't really completely change an offense at any point of the season when you can't block. So shout out Frank Wilson. Shout out Brad Davis. It wasn't all bad this whole time here. But this is the end of a chapter and the beginning of another one that's going to be very exciting for LSU fans. And I think leading up to next year, the vibes will be high. And as Kiffin goes on to put a bow on his transfer portal class, that'll give us a much better idea of what to expect from LSU. But for now, LSU goes down 38-35. They finish the season with a 7-6 record. But the good thing about it is that record led to a new beginning for LSU. And I think that's what you should focus on if you're an LSU fan tonight. Until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter and TikTok at CFBLou. Follow my work on Last Word on Sports. and subscribe to LSU Live and the Voice of College Football Network.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select a betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.